First up, though, we've got Representative Kerry White out of Bozeman on the lines. Kerry, always great to have you on the show. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Hey, good to be here, Aaron.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of our listeners will remember there was this story out of Bozeman where, hey, there was a timber sale that was being put out there for bid. It was on state lands, and it's in a kind of a critical area for folks in Bozeman because if a wildfire sweeps through that area, it could really disrupt the city water supply. It's it's in the city's watershed, and so they put this timber sale out there for bid. And a group of environmentalists actually raised enough money to buy the timber sale and to then block a timber project from taking place. And so a lot of folks were pretty shocked by that. But now you actually passed legislation that would prevent that from happening in the future. And surprisingly enough, given all the vetoes from Governor Steve Bullock, he actually supported this legislation.
Well, he did, and I think that piece of legislation was very critical to the Department of Natural Resource and Conservation and their forestry division. They testified in front of the committee that because that 440 acres and I'm not sure the board feet, maybe 9 or 10 million board feet involved in that timber sale, the state for the school trust is supposed to, get as much money through that timber and forestry for the school trust. And they said in committee they were going to have to scramble to try to make up the difference on that on the timber that they were losing within that sale. That conservation license came into effect about 20 years ago, passed by the legislature. It was used once up around Whitefish to carve out about an acre around a residence up there. Hasn't been used since. The Limestone West up here, Triple Tree, kind of a upscale community south of Bozeman here, didn't want any of that timber to be cut for various reasons, view shed and roads being built in there and stuff like that. So anyway, they were able to raise that money in about a week. The bid on that was about $358,000 was bid by the timber companies, and about $400,000 was bid by the Limestone West property owners up there in raising those money. Although it was kind of apples to oranges when you bid on those, because the infrastructure and roads and stuff that has to be put in by the timber company, and in this case it was about $160,000 of infrastructure. They had to include that within their bid. So they were more up around $600,000. And so they really, the conservation license didn't have to put up any money or infrastructure to harvest the timber, so they didn't have to.
So it didn't really, So that was a point a lot of our listeners raised, which was when the DNRC accepted that bid from the environmentalists, basically, or the landowners, however you want to describe it, that they didn't accurately portray the true costs and benefits to the state of Montana. We had an interesting call the other day.
Exactly.
I think it was a caller out of Three Forks who said, "Hey, maybe the DNRC, maybe we should manage our timber the way that we manage our wildlife." So let's say, for example, if Fish, Wildlife, and Parks put out a certain number of tags for a certain animal this year, and all of those animals weren't harvested, well, then they would offer up more tags the next year. They would expand that harvest next year. So he said, why not do the same thing with our timber? Okay, well, if the environmentalists, if they didn't harvest the timber in this timber sale, even though they bought the timber sale, well, then now let's offer another bid on another state land and just keep doing it until we harvest the timber.
Yeah, and I heard that caller call in. I was listening to the show on that, Aaron, and the problem is with the state land is they're on a schedule for harvesting this timber. I mean, it only grows X amount of board feet per year per acre. And so they kind of have this mapped out, what timber is going to be ready in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And so they can't over-harvest, and that's why they said that they kind of had to scramble to try to find some additional timber to be cut to make up for the loss of this timber. The state has quite a bit of timberland, but they do a great job, and they harvest as much timber as they possibly can, but they can't get into a situation where they overharvest. The other thing, too, they were testifying in front of the committee is that by including a conservation license, they have to do a Montana Environmental Policy Act analysis on not cutting that timber and letting it set for X amount of years or whatever. What would be the loss of the value of the timber itself? Of course, you have a risk of wildfire and everything too. And they were saying that's anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 in additional cost per timber harvest in the state of Montana. And they're doing anywhere from 9 to 13 timber harvests per year. So it could be, a cost of $600,000 to $1 million of extra cost for DNRC.
Very interesting.
Just to do a conservation license analysis.
Costs that should be factored in. Well, important work done by Representative Kerry White as always. Kerry, thanks for being with us. Thanks for the update. Congrats on getting your bill through with the signature.
Thank you.